coming. Before we begin, I'll be introducing our speaker today. And so allow me to welcome Dr. Mark Henderson. Dr. Henderson is a professor of internal medicine and associate dean of admissions at the UC Davis School of Medicine. He is a master of the American College of Physicians and previously served as residency program director for internal medicine at the University of Texas Health Science Center, San Antonio, and at UC Davis. Dr. Henderson has won numerous teaching awards and currently holds the Dean's Endowed Chair in Teaching Excellence at UC Davis School of Medicine. Dr. Henderson has also studied the MMI method for medical school interviews, including as a PI of the California Longitudinal Evaluation of Admission Practices Consortium.
Thanks for that nice introduction, Edith. I'm going to share my screen. Nice to see you all virtually today. I'm going to pull up a few slides. Today, I'm going to talk a bit mostly about medical school admissions, and there's going to be plenty of time for questions, as Edith alluded to. But some of my comments also apply to other health professions as well, and I'll talk about that. Let me see here. Share. Let's see. Share. Oh, here we go. There we go. Is that working, Edith? You can tell me. Okay. Let me put it on slide view, right? Slideshow. Okay, there we go. So, yeah. So a bit about our school. It's a trauma center. That's really how UC Davis Medical Center was started in the 70s. It's a very young medical center and medical school. That may not seem young to y'all, but that's, as medical schools go, that's very young. We're known as a primary care school. And then, may have heard that our school is ranked quite highly in terms of student diversity. The mission of the school is really to meet the health workforce needs of California. Now, I'm going to talk mostly about the medical school, as I said earlier, but we also have a nursing school that also is focused on health workforce needs in California, particularly in Northern California. So that's the mission of our school. This is just, again, breaking that down a bit. The way we achieve that mission, our strengths, if you will, I think have to do with the diversity of our student body. And when I say diversity, I mean in all respects, broadly defined, and that builds the education of our students. People benefit from learning from each other's paths, and we have all kinds of different people, all kinds of different students, all kinds of different perspectives. And I think that's really fundamental to our success as a school. Again, we're trying to create physicians, if you will, create nurses, create actually physician's assistants that to meet the needs of California. California has lots of healthcare needs. We can talk about them later, but the geographic focus of our school is Northern California. So that means where we are today, Sacramento, all the way to the Oregon border, and then as well as the Central Valley, but the San Joaquin Valley, I would say, especially the northern part of that valley. There are many, many underserved communities in that region, and there are many shortages of physicians in that region. So that's really those are the goals of why we do what we do at UC Davis. There's a few. I'm going to talk a little bit about the requirements for medical school. I won't go through them all in detail, but if you apply to our medical school, you have to have the MCAT. That's true for all medical schools, actually. You have to have at least 3 years of undergraduate coursework. I will say the vast majority of our students have a bachelor's degree, but it's not absolutely required. But like I said, most people do. As you can see, there's some other requirements having to do with science, biology, chemistry, physics. The reason we have those requirements, we actually used to have many more requirements. We have less now because, we feel like we want you to be able to explore other things. And these courses that I've listed here are necessary, essentially, to take the medical college admissions test, the MCAT. So that's really all of our requirements boil down to just trying to help you prepare for that exam. We don't want you to waste the rest of your college career on courses that don't actually, we want you to explore and become a well-rounded student. This is a bit about our process. We get a lot of applications, probably 8,000, depends on the year, 8,000, 8,500. That's a lot. We offer secondaries. Secondary means that the candidate is invited to submit letters of recommendation and to submit additional essays that have to do with UC Davis specifically. Whereas the first cut, if you will, that was called AMCAS, which is listed on the slide, American Medical College Admissions Service, is a uniform application. Everyone fills, you just have to fill it out once. And then, you apply to many different schools. You check a bunch of boxes depending on where you want to apply. That's different from getting invited for what's called, again, secondary application from schools that might be interested in you as a candidate. So about half of our applicants, a little less than that, get that secondary invitation. That's so that they can talk more about why they might fit with UC Davis, and they can actually have people write them letters of recommendation. There's a few more things that go into that. And then from those, about 1 in 7 gets an interview. So that's 500 interviews. Sometimes we do 500, a little more, depends on the year. And then after all that, we have 137 this year, 137 students. So you can see it's a very narrow funnel. And I would say if you look at this, that's only about a 3% acceptance rate. And that's true for most medical schools, actually. Now, that doesn't mean your chance of getting into medical school is only 3%. That's just individual schools' acceptance rate. I think if you apply across the United States of America, your chances of getting into medical school are about 40%. Okay, so 40, 41, 42% of the people who apply each year get into at least one school. Now, if you apply over multiple years, that number goes up. And many times people apply multiple times. In fact, almost 20% of our students, 20% have applied multiple times to medical school. That means they were unsuccessful before. This is just a bit about how medical schools and nursing schools as well look at candidates. There's something called the holistic model of evaluation, which means trying to look at the whole person. Now, EAM, I'm going to go into what those letters mean. I put a website here, which you can look at. This is for medicine specifically, but again, a similar rubric applies to other health professions. So this one is from aspiringdocs.com, but you can look that up. What it means, EAM, E is experience. I've listed some of the experiences that most medical schools and nursing schools look at when they think about candidates. So obviously, healthcare experience seems like a good idea. Now, it's hard to get sometimes, but some experiences that you might have may be peripherally related to healthcare, or might give you qualities that the school believes might serve someone who's in healthcare well. Research you've all heard about is something that people consider to be important. It's not mandatory, but people who do research often have demonstrated an ability to work hard, to be perseverant, to kind of stick with a particular project to its fruition or to its finish. So these are qualities that physicians need. Leadership, community service, all those things are important. They're not all important. These are just examples of experiences. Work is another, really important, I think, experience. Can be, especially if that work builds skills, qualities, attributes that we feel are important for working in healthcare. And there are many types of jobs actually that prepare you well for healthcare, particularly if you think about teamwork, which I've listed there. We also look at obstacles overcome. Why is that? It's because there are a lot of obstacles in medicine. We can talk about some of those. So it's a kind of career that's long, and there are ups and downs, and you have to be able to stick with it. So the ability to overcome obstacles is actually very important. Those are the E. So medical schools look at experiences. They also look at attributes. I've listed some of the attributes here. I won't go through them all, but these attributes are attributes that we feel are important to the practice of medicine, the practice of nursing, the practice of, many healthcare careers. Curiosity. Again, I spoke already about resilience. Communication is probably one of the most important skills or attributes that someone can have. So to the extent that
someone has good communication, or that
or in letters of recommendation, that's something that's viewed very important. Language fluency, especially languages that are spoken by the patients that are served in a particular community. So if you think about California, if you're a Spanish speaker, that probably helps, because over 40% of the population in the state have Spanish language off, as a very important part of their cultural background. So that's an example, but there are many others. Self-improvement, self-assessment and improvement. Again, medicine is a process of lifelong learning. And if you cannot learn from your mistakes or your, slip-ups, you're not going to do very well in medicine, again, or nursing. Honesty, integrity, compassion. Some of these things may be obvious. They're hard to assess for. But again, these are the kinds of attributes that schools look for. The last part of this model is metrics. So, which means, objective things. And I've listed the types of objective things on this slide. I talked about the MCAT a little bit already. Grades, but grades, I would say, is too simple of an explanation. I would want to put grades in context of, your trajectory. In other words, right, grade trends. If someone struggled, that's not a deal breaker. Maybe they've struggled and then learned to improve. So the trends of your grades are important. What you were doing when you're in college, whether you were working or not. There's lots of things to put grades in context. And then on the last side of this slide, part of this slide, we have individuals who engage in coursework after their undergraduate degree, post-baccalaureate programs, or graduate school. These things are all considered. So it's not one particular grade or grade point average. It's the constellation of these things. I'm just going to mention this briefly. Situational judgment tests are tests that give you their online examinations that a number of schools in California are using as part of their application process. We don't really know exactly what these tests mean over the long term, but they're aimed at assessing people's judgment with online, like, difficult sort of situations, and difficult situations come up all the time in healthcare. So this is a requirement for UC Davis, for UCLA, for, I can't remember the other schools in California, and then many other schools outside of California require this. I think it costs $100, but if you're eligible for fee assistance, the fee is waived. Just like we can talk more about that, the fee assistance program for medical school. It's similar to that. This is a little bit about UC Davis. We have, our school is unique in that it has a number of what we call community health scholar pathways. What this means is if you come to UC Davis School of Medicine, there's an opportunity to join one of 5 pathway programs. I've put their logos on the bottom of this slide. I won't go into the detail. I'll just say that each of them is aimed at training students to become leaders in healthcare in a unique underserved California community. So one of them is a rural training program. One of them is a program that aims to improve care in the Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley. One of them is a tribal medicine, tribal health program, meaning it's aiming to provide greater service to tribal and indigenous communities of California. The other 2 have to do with primary care in urban underserved areas. So these programs give you additional curriculum, and they give you additional experiences while as a medical student. So it's like extra stuff, but that extra stuff is aimed at a career in serving one of these vulnerable communities. So the 4th year of medical school, 3rd and 4th year, you actually get to spend time in these communities, depending on which track you're in. About a 30% of our students are in one of these pathway programs. And that's something you would apply to in the secondary form of our application that I alluded to earlier. So that second stage. I'm not going to talk too much about some of our pathway programs because I know Dr. Green is going to come and speak to y'all in a couple of weeks about these are our pre-medical pathway programs. I just told you about our medical school pathways, but these are the pre-medical school pathways: Avenue M, the Health Equity Academy, MSPEP, and then our post-baccalaureate program. Each of these programs is aimed at increasing or enhancing opportunity for students who might be in community college, actually, or who might have not had exposure to medicine, or might not be connected to medicine in some way. So again, many of the students, like yourself, like the organization that you're part of here at Pre-Med CC, is, the focus of these programs is outreach and on including individuals who might not otherwise have a chance. This is a little bit about our new curriculum. I'm not going to talk about it. I'll just say, because it's too complicated and boring, you don't need to know about this anyway, but basically I'll say that there's a lot of mentorship within the school and a lot of opportunity to explore different kinds of careers within the school. And the point of this new curriculum is it's meant to integrate experiences across over time rather than to keep them in separate little silos. So it's meant to provide more longitudinality and more experience for our students over time. But again, this is getting way ahead of what we're talking about today. So that's my last slide, and I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'll take questions. And I know there must be some. Oh, I see a bunch. Okay. I'll let you tell me, Edith, how to take the questions. Should I just start reading them from the chat, or do you want to tell me the
Yeah,
We'll ask him.
Yeah, I
Okay.
could read them for you. So the first one says, I'm a non-traditional pre-med and was wondering if the prereqs timeline start after graduating, or is it from the year that we took the course?
Yeah, it's a great question. So prerequisite classes, we tend to consider them, if you're a non-traditional student and you're taking them, after your, if you will, undergraduate degree, then most schools use a standard of 3 years, and they also use that standard for the tests, like the medical college admissions test, meaning if you've had courses or taken the MCAT within 3 years of your application, not starting medical school, but applying, then that's acceptable. That's certainly the case at our school, but it really, each school's kind of has subtle little differences. And so you might want to check with the school. Sometimes it's 4 years, but again, most schools, excuse me, it's 3 years. So if let's say you had a physics requirement, you'd want to have taken that physics within 3 years of your application.
The next question is, does UC Davis consider a post-bac GPA separate from undergrad? And how much does it weigh compared to a low MCAT, but a lot of great extracurriculars?
Well, yes, there's several questions there. The post-bac GPA is considered separate, meaning, if most people who are involved in post-baccalaureate programs, they do so because maybe they want to improve their GPA, or maybe they want to enhance their academic, kind of their credentials, if you will. And so UC Davis School of Medicine definitely considers those post-bac grades to be separate. And we consider them to be, since they're more recent, we often consider them to be more reflective of the student's potential in medical school. Now, I think the other part of the question had to do with extracurriculars and other experiences. Those are super important. But we don't have a formula I can't tell you how much they're weighted because we don't have a formula. Each student is kind of looked at individually and holistic. That's what holistic means, is sort of trying to look at each individual's experiences, look at each individual's attributes, who they are, where they come from, and then look at those metrics like grades. So all of those things are looked at. It's not one or the other. It's not a formula. Sadly. I don't know, sadly. That's good.
Thank you. Okay, the next one says, if there's a preference towards in-state students or UC Davis undergrads.
Great question. We, as a public school that's funded by the state of California, definitely have a preference for people who come from California. I'd tell you, I can give you these numbers. I think 97% of our students are California residents. Again, why? Because the state of California, the citizens of California, taxpayers of California pay money to support the University of California. So it's not that we don't consider out-of-state students. We do. We have many people apply from out of state. I just think that it's our mission is really to serve California. And so we don't, someone has to have an application that suggests to us beyond where they're from, because let's say they're not from California. We do have some non-Californians. They have to be from Oregon. We have some, usually it's the surrounding states. But if we feel like they are going to serve California, then they might be considered. But we don't have very many, just to be honest. Now, that's not true of other schools in California. Private schools, UCLA, UCSF, they take many out-of-state students. I think their mission is different from ours. I
So
can't remember.
we're
Did I miss Edith? Did I miss a second? There's probably what was the other part of the question? I already forgot it.
Yeah, the other part was if there's preference for UC Davis
Oh,
undergrad.
no, I don't think so. Although I will tell you, we have a lot of UC Davis students, undergrad. You mean who graduate from UC Davis undergrad?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the question is that they want to know if you go to UC Davis, you have a higher chance of getting into UC Davis Medical School.
I think I guess a complicated answer. I think the answer probably is yes, but only because if you're in the area and you get involved in activities that have to do with our local community, of Sacramento, of Davis, of Knights Landing, whatever, a number of local communities in our area. If people have worked in those communities, I think that helps them in our application process, but it's not necessarily because they're from UC Davis. I think because of that proximity, probably do have some of an advantage, although it's not an explicit one. And we certainly have many students from the other UC camp. About half of our students, maybe 60%, are from a UC campus of one sort or another. I think UCLA, because UCLA is so big, there are always UCLA students everywhere.
And Berkeley too.
What's that? What's that? Berkeley
And
too.
Berkeley.
Yes. Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard to not. It's not hard. It's hard not to have them. Not that they're. I mean, whatever. I'm just saying. UC Davis. I think maybe the point is that UC Davis as an institution, the undergraduate campus, has some of the similar values that we have because we're part of that institution. So I do think that's probably why the highest school. I mean, there are a lot of Davis students in our medical school. Maybe 15%, 20%, something like that. 15 to 20% of our students on a given year come from UC Davis, but it's not intentional.
But a lot of those opportunities that are available around Sacramento and Davis, they're also around Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, LA. I mean, urban underserved, you literally need to go 3 exits and you will be in those areas. So it's like there's no magical dust around Sacramento that there are free clinics there. Matter of fact, actually, they're probably more in the Bay Area and LA because Sacramento is only what 400,000. You know, the region is less than a million, about a million people, but LA is what 7 million.
No,
So
you're right. I think the thing is that UC Davis as an undergraduate campus has quite a few connection with community clinics serving those underserved populations in the Sacramento and Davis area. Maybe that's why.
Yes. So
Again,
we're getting a lot of questions about the whole 5-year thing.
what's
And
the
so we're
go ahead.
getting a lot of questions about the 5-year thing. I think people are freaking out about that. So people saying, well, what if it takes me 6 years or 7 years to graduate? Do I need to retake my classes?
No. I think if it's part of a degree program, no. I was sort of thinking about a non-traditional student, and I was assuming that that was a student who had gone to college and then was doing after that, trying to meet the requirements. In other words, let's say they didn't take physics, okay, in as part of their undergraduate degree, and they wanted to take physics to meet those requirements I put on the slide. That course, physics, not the rest of it, would have to be within 3 years. Yeah, that's just UC Davis. I think the thing is, you should contact the school if you're. This is something that the prerequisites usually aren't verified until uh, like downstream in the process, meaning you would if you get far along with a school, you should definitely check it out about your prerequisites, because occasionally we've had students who don't meet the requirements, but they let us know, and then we try to give them an opportunity to meet them prior to matriculating. Might be one course or something like that. I don't know. Again, these are very individual in terms
Yeah,
of the
this
school.
person wants to know because they started college in 2018 or
Yep.
2019 and they're still going.
Yep.
They just want to know if they have to go retake those classes for
No,
their first year.
if those classes are leading to a degree at that institution and that degree is granted in 2024, that's the date we would use, the 2024 date. Now, I think some schools might look, let's say you took physics in 2018, okay? And you got a really bad grade. And then your physics score in the MCAT was really bad or something. I don't know, I'm making this up. They might that's still, you would still apply, but it still might be a concern of someone. Whereas if you took physics in 2018 and you did badly, but then later on you either did really well in another physics course, or on the MCAT, you kind of showed that you've made a trajectory or gone in an upward trend, then that might be perceived as positive. Most of the prerequisites, the actual requirements, they're listed on every. If you just go to a website for a medical school and look at their requirements, it'll tell you what they are.
Can you elaborate more on what UC Davis considers healthcare experience?
Um, wow, I have lots of different things. Wow.
I think they want to know what exactly they need to do to get in.
Yeah,
And that's very yeah. So we did a 2-hour talk about the various clinical experiences you could do, and some of them are little as 20 hours you could get. So any kind of clinical experience you want to do and going into a hospital, you need to be certified. Nobody's going to magically let you come into the hospital and do clinical things. It's just that hospital has like liabilities and things, and so there's things you could do if you're interested. But if you look at that, pardon me, that presentation, we have a lot of examples that you could look at clinical experience. And non-clinical experience is basically, and you want to elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, sure. No, I was going to say, if it's what Jubin said is correct, that I don't know, pure clinical experience, or I don't know, hospital experience sometimes is tough to get. So of course, I don't think that's absolutely required. So experiences that actually build skills around the skills that are those needed in healthcare. What are those? I told you already: communication, teamwork, um, problem solving. Again, research is not a clinical experience, but it has people have to solve problems. They also have to do experiments that don't work, and then they have to figure out how to make them work, and they have to persist. All of these things are not clinical, but they say something about people's their attributes. Again, attributes of communication, teamwork. Those things I think you could get. I feel like people who work in a restaurant. I worked in a restaurant when I was in high school for 3 years. I learned a lot about communication, a lot about hard work, a lot about uh, customer service. A lot about, how people get upset at you all the time. You think that happens in medicine? It happens all the time. People are upset. It's not because they didn't get their coffee or it's cold, right? It's because they're in pain, whatever. They're worried. They don't know what's wrong with them. These things. So there are lots of different activities that to me could give you the types of skills that would help you in medicine. Medicine's a customer service profession. So I wouldn't, and some people have to work. They can't, I think that you got to do what you can. It's not a bad thing, but sometimes they're hard to get. So I think there are lots of things. Volunteering, working as a nursing assistant. I mean, there's so many different ones. I think I took a look at that presentation. There are lots of ideas there, but you kind of have to go with where you are, where you live, and what opportunities are available there. I think service learning that's not medical, not healthcare, is also, can provide insight into those kinds of qualities as well.
Yeah, I mean the easiest thing, I think, patient transport or called patient escort. The minimum you need to do that, you need to be a CPR healthcare certified, and I think that's 6 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 4 hours.
If you do it, yeah, like the American Heart Association, yeah, you could probably do it in 4 hours. Sometimes your school will have if you're out of school, the certification is even easier than that. Or it's just, you can break it up into a
Yeah.
couple. But there's some pretty low bar things that you could to be
You don't need to become a nurse or anything like that. There's a lot of things like patient escort, patient transport. I mean, it's the easiest thing. You just need to be able to, I think, lift 25 pounds or 30 pounds or something and be CPR certified. And that's a really great way to get.
You could be a lifeguard. Is that related to healthcare? Yes. I mean, the skills that, again, you have to learn to be a lifeguard or to be a coach. There's so many things to me that might be relevant. My advice is do something that you feel is meaningful and that you can stick with. Because if you become, I don't know, if some people become EMT certified, but if they only do that for a month, it doesn't mean much. So I think something that you can, if you can get involved with activities that you can stick with, they probably make a bigger impact on your application. Now, of course, that takes more time, right? But our school's a little bit different. The average entering age of a UC Davis medical student is about 25. That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm going to say that's old. It's not old. I'm old, but that's older than a lot of schools.
Next question. If someone has submitted their secondary application and they start a new position, whether it be work or as an intern, do you suggest that they reach out to the admissions committee and give them an update?
Generally not, only because most medical schools have gone to an electronic application service, and it's not possible to update. And with electronic applications, all of the communication has to be one, electronic, and all of it has to be it's hard to do updates, actually. So most schools will tell you that you can send it, but they're not going to be able to get it to committee members. So you really have to, if you anticipate an activity or you've started an activity, you can list that. Or if you haven't started it, again, you could put anticipated. That's probably the best way to do it. But updates. Now, if a school is not on an electronic system, then it might be possible. I just don't know any schools that aren't anymore, so I doubt it. So I would say no.
A more personal question. When did you know that you wanted to apply to med school, and was there any pivotal moment or experience that encouraged you to apply?
Yeah, I was not a medical, I was not a pre-med. So I'm not going to have the usual answer to that question. I was an engineering student in college. So um, I think the pivotal moment was when I realized I didn't want to be an engineer and it was really boring and really, staying up all night working on computer programs and programming wasn't for me. I mean, so that was maybe my junior year in college, something like that. So then I had to begin to explore other, healthcare stuff. And I didn't really have any experience with healthcare. I knew some people who, and so I did research. And I mean, I got involved with the research, physiology research, and that was super interesting to me. And that kind of one thing led to another. And, because I'd been a hard science major, I didn't have to change, I didn't have to take a lot of classes because I had already taken a bunch of physics, math, all this crazy engineering stuff. So, um, so I guess I'm a non-traditional student, but I think it was that I realized, and I think this is something to think about. Some people get involved with medicine for the wrong reasons. I don't know what the wrong reasons are, but it's good to know that you really want it because it's just a long career. And I think for me, that was very intimidating. Even when I just began to think about medicine, I'm like, wow, I'm going to be 30 before I get my first paycheck, like real paycheck. I mean, I already had paychecks, but they were, working as a busboy, as I told y'all, or driving, so, but what I mean is, as a doctor, you don't start your first job till you're in your 30s. Now, that's pretty intimidating to me. That was pretty intimidating. So it's a long career, and then, lots of changes. And so the more you can kind of think about it, maybe get experience, talk to people, work in something nearby, I think the better. Um, but yeah, no, I don't know that it was for me, I don't know, it was an inspirational moment. It was more that I realized I didn't want to do what I was doing, and I knew what I was good at. I actually was good at customer service in the jobs I worked at. And medicine fundamentally is about people. Now, people, that sounds kind of great, like apple pie, maybe, but people are messy, and you have to, dealing with people is not straightforward. But I had a lot of experience dealing with people in my various jobs, not just the restaurant. So I knew I could do that. And it was rewarding to me in some sense. Now, of course, medicine is not just dealing with people, it's dealing with sick people. So that's an additional layer of, you have to build skills that have to do with your people skills. And some people have them naturally, some people don't. So they have to build them. But anyway, so that's a bit about, yeah, my story. Yeah. Probably
Thank
too
you.
much.
Oh,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just scrolling through the Q&A and I'm seeing a lot of questions about your secondaries,
Yeah.
what you look for in selecting interviews, and then also a lot of questions about the MMIs that UC Davis host and what you look for in applicants who do get to that stage.
Yeah. So the first question, who gets an interview? It's hard to say. We have a very diffuse process. What do I mean by that? It's not a top-down process. We actually have every application is read, and this is unusual. Most schools this is not true. Every single application is read by a human being, okay? At least one human being. So, and once you get to the secondary, if you get to the secondary stage, each of the secondaries is read by multiple individuals. And each of those individuals is, if you will, scores your application. What do they do? They look at the experiences, they look at the activities, they look at all that stuff, and they score each of the activities, they score the letters, and then those things, they're averaged across multiple people. And then so it's a very decentralized process where the people that are involved, it depends on the person reading your application, but it's not just one person. It's multiple individuals. So it's hard for me to tell y'all what it takes, because it's not one thing. I think I've told you about the mission of our school. We tend to look for people who bring something unique to the school, and something that we think will lead to a positive effect on a healthcare, a community that of need, like I said, the communities that we're trying to serve, or that they suggest that they'll be a great physician. And there's just not a formula for that. So it really, we have students involved in our process. Let me transition to the second part of the question, was MMI. MMI is something that we have a lot of experience with, many, many years. We have very different kinds of, lots of diversity in the people who are involved in that. It's students, it's physicians, it's faculty. We sometimes have patients involved in MMI as the people who you meet. We have we have people, nurses, social workers. We had a cop for many years, police officer from UC Davis, but he no longer does it. But I'm just saying, we have a lot of diversity in our process. In terms of what the MMI is like, I mean, you could read it on the internet. Probably all the scenarios are out there on the internet, so I don't even need to say that. I mean, I'll just tell you, it's not like a multiple choice test. So it's not like if you prepare. In fact, I think if people try to prepare, kind of the scripted answer, it probably hurts them. Because what we're looking for in the MMI is spontaneity and a little bit about what people are like. And so the various scenarios are they're different, but there's not a right answer. I'm giving you a secret right now. There's not a right answer on many of the MMI stations. And so but you have to sort of engage with whoever the individual is that you're speaking to, and try to answer their question and have a conversation. But again, many times, I don't know, I don't know if there's ever a right answer. There might be a right answer sometimes, but it's not like a multiple choice test. It's really, again, we want to get to know, I mean, you all know this, like the purpose of healthcare, right, is to improve the well-being of patients. Okay. The biggest complaint patients have about doctors is, maybe you all know this, it's another secret, does anybody know? Put it in the chat. What do you think the biggest complaint about doctors is?
I could tell you, they don't spend enough time with their patients.
Right. That's right. And they don't do something else. They don't listen to me. Yeah. They don't see me. They don't respect me. But really, the bottom line is they don't listen to me, or spend, as Jubin said, you don't spend enough time with me. So these kinds of things, can a person listen? Okay. Well, that's something you probably learn. I don't know if you learn it in kindergarten, but I don't know. You learn it a lot earlier than your medical school application. So, but that's the kind of thing we look for in the MMI. Does this person listen? Do they answer the question? Can they think on their feet? Some of the things we think are important in medicine, but it's not like a multiple choice test. There's not a right answer often.
Yeah, and actually,
go ahead. Do you want me to get technical about the MMI? I could explain it, but yes or no? Go ahead.
Go for it.
It's 8 or 10 different, it's 10 different stations, each lasting 8 minutes. Now, other schools that have versions of that, some brief interaction, 8 minutes or so, 6-8 minutes, and then you move to a different station. We call them stations, which means a different interaction, a different person that you're interacting with. Sometimes you're asked to solve a problem, but you're doing 10 different things. And then those 10 different interactions are rated, they're scored. I'll just tell you how they're scored. At UC Davis, they're scored 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4 being the best, 1 being the worst. Okay. Imagine this. Each of them is scored, and then you get 10, and then they're all averaged, and that's the score. So the score could be 1, 2, 3, or 4. But the point I'm making is a lot of different people have input into into your overall score. One, number two, if you bomb one station, it doesn't matter. What if you get a 1 on one or two? You get one. I mean, it doesn't matter because there are all those other stations. So I like MMI because it gives people lots of chances. I don't know if
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing about the MMI is that you have to do your research. There's a lot of great prompts on YouTube that you could find. And I think we posted them in one of our sessions. Dr. Campa, she's coming back again. One of Dr. Henderson's mentees and colleagues. She did a whole session on MMI interviews. And I think she's done some research about them as well. So she'll be here, I think, in October. Again, she's going to do another talk on that. But I think the biggest thing is that there's a lot of information on there. There's a lot of prompts on YouTube, and if you're someone who's not been in those situations, there's a lot of techniques. Also, people that record yourself and answering them, because the aspect of it is that once you're in the hospital, and and Dr. Henderson, the dean of admission part is only half of his job. The other half of it is he teaches residents and other things. Is they want to know if you could follow instructions. If if Dr. Henderson says, "Hey, I need you to do X, Y, Z to this patient," and you don't follow it, you could kill someone. And so MMI kind of gives them a good insight into see if you could take information, process it, and act on it, and if you comprehended that. And so I think it's a new thing. There's a lot of things that have been talked about it, and again, Dr. Campos is going to talk a whole hour and a half about MMI interviewing. So
wow, that's going to be good. If Dr. Campa does it, it'll be interesting. It'd probably be more, yeah, I'm not going to say less boring than if she's been a dynamic speaker. So let me say this. What I don't, and I don't know, I don't want to steal her thunder, but I want y'all to realize that where you come from, who you are, that uniqueness is important. And sometimes what I see is people over prepare and they try to be like everybody else. And then we don't see that unique individual shine through. So my advice is, and I like this, I don't know if you've all ever seen the movie Aladdin. I'm sure you've seen that. It's a Disney movie, right? There's a scene in Aladdin where Aladdin is about to go on a date with Jasmine, and they're going to go on a magic carpet ride. Okay, and he's really nervous, and he's saying to the genie, he's turned to the genie, said, I don't know what to do. I'm scared, I'm nervous, whatever. The genie gives him a piece of advice. The genie turns into a bee and he starts buzzing around Aladdin, and he says, "Be yourself, be yourself." That's my advice for MMI. Now, when you over prepare, sometimes that person goes away and it turns into some other thing. So try to avoid that. Being yourself's a good idea. Now, I think what you've said is getting familiar with it. That's fine. Just don't take away who you are.
yeah, because they change all the time. They're not going to be the same.
Also,
And so you're not. I mean, we put the database of all the secondary essays because those are out there on the internet. People post them, and you could look at every medical school secondary there is, and and you could prepare for it. But you could take a look at it. But people are asking about what's the preview score for accepted students.
preview, yeah, we don't have one because that's a new tool. We don't, we're actually studying it. We're trying to figure out what it means. So we don't have a preview score. You could have any preview score, actually. Again, I'm giving away all these secrets. But yes, there's no we don't have a
Yeah, and you could go look on the AMC preview website. They have like a score breakdown of every school. A lot of this information is online. You could just take a look at what the scores are for. There's like the whole bell curve and everything that's out there. So you can take a look at the percentiles that they have.
But just so you know about it. That test, again, in the pandemic, it was developed because it was felt that people in the pandemic didn't have a chance to kind of shine in a way, and there were all kinds of irregularities with the MCAT, and so they wanted to do another kind of assessment to give people an opportunity to take a test online they could do in the, if you will, the comfort of their own home, but that would be say something that was not just another test score. That's the idea of preview. Again, it's new, and so I don't know how I don't know what to make of it. I can't tell you a lot of data about it. And so that's why we don't put a lot of stock in, I'll be honest. We do require it because we want to see what it means. And I think it's a good idea in principle. So I don't know. Are you guys there? I know I'm seeing all the questions. You want me to just take them in order? You guys want to tell me which ones?
I think we're putting them together for you.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right.
The other question is, this is actually a couple of them. Do you accept students that have started at community college or that have taken their prereqs at community college?
Are you kidding me?
This is a question. I'm just asking.
We've studied we've done a national study of what happens to community college students when they enter healthcare. I'll just give you the bottom line. Community college students who eventually enter healthcare are actually more likely to go into areas of healthcare where they're needed. So I think going to community college is a great is something we view favorably. And to answer the question, if you take your prerequisite at community college, it's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the state is spending $14 million a year programs like Avenue M and other programs for community college students. So
yeah, let me just tell you why what's different about community colleges. I'll tell you what's different. They look like and feel like and represent the United States of America. That's actually not what universities are like. What I mean by that is people from all walks of life can go to community college. People with all kinds of struggles, people that have to be working, that have to have children, they're older, they're whatever. I mean, these things, again, are what normal people deal with. And I'm going to tell you, normal people are the people those are our patients. So going to community college is not, UC Davis, don't discriminate against community college students. I actually think there are probably schools that do. But that's a big mistake, actually. You're missing out on people that just have a lot to offer healthcare. And we've actually studied that question. So
a lot of people are asking us questions, and I'm just going to put that in there to save you the time about MCAT. What's the MCAT lowest, highest range? So I put all the data from the 2027 class.
Okay. Yeah.
You could take a look at it. And just understand, like, if there's a, overall average, statistically, it's not that exact score, but it's in a range. And so, and you could, put it actually with ChatGPT, you could put it in there and say, if you have an overall GPA of this from a mean.
Yeah, I like that.
So you could get a range.
You could get a range. And that
out of 8,000.
AAMC has a table that incorporates your undergrad.
Oh yeah, I should put that in there.
And MCAT. And that's actually to me, a good table just to get an idea. But I just want to tell you, we have many students who have grades and MCATs below that average and many that are above it. And that's why it would be very hard for me to say that you have to have we don't have a cutoff, actually. So now, and someone who has a very like a grade point average that's low, but they have a high MCAT, or the vice versa, that might make up for the other, is what I mean. You know what I mean? In the sense of the whole point of this is that you have to be able to take the coursework in medical school and survive it. You know what I mean? Like, actually, like, It's hard. And so the idea that that's the only purpose of the numbers is just to see if we think that the person can handle the coursework in medical school. So we have a post-bac program. You're going to meet Dr. Campa. She could tell you about it because she runs it. But what they do in the post-bac program is they simulate medical school courses. That's why I think post-bac course programs can be very positive, because they simulate the intensity sometimes of the medical school curriculum. And if you can do that, and if you're able to succeed, then that's a really good sign for schools. Like, again, like our school, again, we look for students who are a bit, have a different path. They have other attributes and experiences. Again, many that don't just go straight through school. They're older, like I said. So these kinds of things, we often have students come from programs, the post-bac programs. I wouldn't get hung up in the MCAT stuff. I mean, I like the idea of looking at the data, plug it into ChatGPT, whatever, like Juben said, to give you a sense. But here's another thing I'll say. California, there are a lot of people, I told you, there are 8,000. There are about 8,000 Californians who apply to medical school every year, and they apply to all of the schools. Does anyone know how many slots do you think there are in California for medical school each year? Anybody have any idea? Put it in the chat.
Private or just UCs?
All of them. All of them.
I think it's something like 600 and something.
It's a little more than that. It's about 1,800. But I want you to do
okay, yeah, UC versus
simple math. 8,000, okay, and 1,800. What does that mean? That means 1,800 people get into medical school from California each year. That means just simple math, 6,200 don't. Okay, that means 3/4. It's almost 75 to 85% of the, there just aren't enough medical schools in California to meet the demand. Okay, now across the country, that number is more like well, there are 50,000 applicants, 50,000, 52, 54, and there are about 28,000 spots, excuse me. So it's about 2 to 1. But in California, it's crazy. It's 4 or 5 to 1. It's the 47th or 48th lowest percentage of slots available to applicants. That means it's the second or third hardest state to get into medical school. What does that mean? That doesn't mean you can't go to medical school. That means it's dumb to think that you can just apply in California and have a chance. You might, but boy, there's you got to be it's really hard. I used to live in Texas, as was stated in the intro. It's actually easier if you live in Texas and you apply to medical school, because there are more medical schools per applicant than there are in California. There are more slots. So it's just a numbers game. So, but I want you to realize that, California, it's just, we need more schools. We're probably going to get another school, maybe UC Merced. But the problem is it costs money to build schools. I told this story, maybe I told this last year. I went to the opening ceremony of the UC Merced School of Medicine. You know what year that was? 2008. Michelle Obama was there. You know what happened? It never got done. Okay, there was
the economic crisis.
Yeah, that's what happened. So it never got built. It's hard to build more medical schools. So I'm not blaming the state, but it's just we're a very populous state. We don't have enough medical schools. Maybe UC Merced will get built. I think it probably will get built. That's going to add one more. UC Riverside got built by some miracle. But we need more schools, but it's just hard. So I want you to realize that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. That means it might take a while, and you might have to try harder, and you might have to just broaden your horizons. That's certainly the approach that I advise people. So
this is something that I've read and also heard at the meeting, was that for each student that's going to a UC medical school, the state of California is putting $200,000 a year on top of what they pay into their tuition. That's subsidized through the state. And so, because it's not just sitting in a classroom, it's in the hospital and it's all of these different things. So it's about $200,000 a student. So if you have the check to write, I'm sure we could open up more medical schools, but it's
No, that's
very
and you see how we need to open more, but it's just, yeah, how are we going to pay for that? And anyway,
and we could get Bloomberg to write a check, but that's not enough. That has
yeah,
to be something
yeah,
continuous.
he doesn't have any California
If
connections.
you really want, write to your state legislator and say put more.
Well, that's right. There's a state legislator that Joaquin Arambu,
Umbrella.
yeah, Arambula, who is advocating for UC Merced Medical School I was talking about earlier. And he's a physician who's become a legislator. And it's true. I agree. Anyway, but that doesn't help y'all. I mean, it's gonna have, all I want for y'all, to me, I'm trying to put in perspective. It's hard to get in. Many of our students at UC Davis have applied multiple times. What does that mean? I don't want people to give up. It's a long career. People who give up easily, they probably shouldn't be in medicine anyway. I'll just be honest. It's too hard.
On average, how much aid is offered to each student at UC Davis?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It depends on the student. We use need-based financial aid. A lot of schools use what I'm going to put in quotes as merit-based financial aid. We do not do that. We give money to students who need it. We don't. What does that also mean? It's just like the 6,200. We don't give money to students who don't need it. That's actually unpopular because everybody wants money. It's just some people need it more. So, and we're a public school, we're a state school, so we don't have a lot of subsidies, and we have a very fixed financial aid budget. So we can't give it to everybody. So we need to distribute it wisely. So yeah, financial aid at UC Davis is need-based. And so there's not really it's so some people get zero. And then the range is all the way to $40,000 a year. It would be the highest award that's given.
And in your own experiences viewing applications, what has made applicants stand out to you the most?
There's not
The
one
secret sauce.
the secret sauce. There's not one thing. I think it's experience that is uh, that is meaningful, and that can be many different kinds of experiences, but that makes someone asked about being an athlete. That might be a good experience, but it depends on what that meant to that individual, and it depends on what that means for, if it's how relevant it is to healthcare. So to me, the things that stand out generally are the ability to overcome things, obstacles. And again, I've been practicing medicine a long time. I'm in the hospital working right now, and there are people in the hospital I'm taking care of that I'm very worried about. I don't understand. Medicine's complicated. It's difficult. And sometimes we slip up, and there are many obstacles. So to me, the thing that, I guess, if you had to pin me down, I'd say that it's people who've overcome obstacles. And I've seen some people overcome some amazing obstacles. What does that tell me? That tells me they're not gonna give up when they have a bad exam, or when, I don't know, a patient does poorly or dies, something like that. I mean, that's going way ahead. So the medical school is hard. And some people in medical school, here's another thing. I think people who don't, who are engaged with a community, any community. Why is that important? It's a team sport, medicine. I mean, it's not the like the Lone Ranger. It's really not. So, and so I think for us, again, I think that's why we take older students, because we're looking for something special. And it's hard to distinguish yourself going to college, studying, going to the library, getting your degree, and then applying to medical school. It's not bad. That's fine. It's just hard to distinguish oneself amongst that whole. But there's not one thing. There's not one thing.
And there's a lot of questions about the overall timeline. I'm assuming you would suggest to submit application as early as possible, but would there be a cutoff where applications would not be accepted in the cycle?
Yeah, I mean, we have a cutoff. Our cutoff is December 1st. So if you get it in before then, you're going to be considered. I do think there's a little bit of evidence. I don't want you to just think about UC Davis. That would be a dumb strategy. You need to think about getting into medical school somewhere. And so I think overall, it's smarter. The earlier you can, the earlier that you can apply, the better. UC Davis, again, we accept applications a little bit. I think probably October 1st is probably smart. I think that's what you mentioned, Michael. That's probably a smart deadline. It's not absolute, but I think that's smart.
Can you tell them when you send out your first acceptance to people?
Yes. We send out our first acceptance on around November 1st. And that's usually because we start interviewing around September 1st. Okay. And September, and then it takes us a few weeks. So, but we rarely, probably, actually, I guess early October 15th might be the absolute earliest. But so we might accept a few people on October 15th. But then we have rolling admissions. So they generally start in October, late October, and then they go all the way up to, I think we accepted the last person, I don't know, May. It's a long, yeah, it's late April, May. So it depends on the year, but yeah. And then we have a wait list. Sometimes we have people getting off the wait list all the way up till, I don't know, July, actually.
I have a friend who got into Davis literally 4 days before start of class.
There you go.
And she left another medical school to come to Davis. So
Wow.
they're asking about how many spots are in the SJV prime program each year.
That's a great question. Okay. So we have a couple of prime programs. We have rural prime, we have SJV prime. I guess that was a question. Generally, our pathway programs have 8 students. Occasionally it'll be 10, but generally 8. So 8 times 5, they're 40 students total. But again, those are very different pathways. And it varies year to year. Why? Because we don't want those programs, it takes a very unique individual. What do I mean by that? It takes an individual who has lived experience of that community and demonstrates to us that they are going to go back and serve that community, whatever that community is. So generally it's 8 per year. We probably could go to 10, and occasionally we do, but like I said, it's usually 8.
So they're asking about are you at this is again, you just went over it. If, people that take gap years versus non-gap years, and I think, what is it, like
which is
90% of your people have taken gap years, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the numbers. It's a lot. Why is that help students that apply to UC Davis? It's because they tend to take that time to do something that's, meaningful. Meaning that and is relevant. It might be research, it might be the Peace Corps, it might be, it's something that demonstrates, again, persistence, problem solving, service, teamwork. Yeah, this you're making me think of that last question about what impresses me. When people go off and they do the Peace Corps for 2 years, that's pretty impressive to me.
Not everybody's going to go do the Peace Corps. Don't do that.
What did you say?
Not everybody's going to go do the Peace Corps.
Oh man, again, I'll just be honest, some of my best students, yeah, have done the Peace Corps, so that's interesting.
This is somebody's asking about connection to I'm sorry, this person's asking about what upper division courses they should take so they could do well in medical school and they would look good on their application. And can you answer that? Because I've heard you answer this before.
What did I say? I can't remember what I said, Jubin.
Oh, I think you just basically said that if you want it, take it, but we're going to teach you what you need to know in medical
Yes,
school.
no, that's true. That's right. I think and I love that answer, Jubin, that you should take what interests you, not take courses to impress me or someone else. I don't like the emphasis on tests. you have to take the MCAT just because every school is going to require it. So I want you to prepare for that. Beyond that, I want you to take stuff you're interested in. And I think that's another version of saying what Jubin just said.
You said it. I'm quoting you.
But I mean,
I didn't come up with it.
here's the thing. Yeah, you're gonna get so. I think you did say this part, Jubin. Maybe I said it too. You're gonna get so much of this science. Medical school is a bunch of hard science. You don't need more of that. Now you do need to take the MCAT. So, like I said, if you're doing it to take the MCAT, that's fine. But beyond that, I don't think you need it. Some of the other thing that I think doctors don't do well, we talked about, listening. That's verbal communication. I think they don't write well either. And nowadays I see it more and more because Chat GPT writes for them. Well, okay, that's not actually good. Writing is a form of thinking. We actually need people to be thinkers, and they need to think about their patients, and they need to think about, and so writing and other forms of advanced communication are really important. And I'll be honest, I'm very worried they're threatened by all these other tools now that do it for you. So I think learning to write is a good idea. I mean, if you were gonna, and that probably helps you in your medical school application too. Probably if you can write a good essay. But it also just helps you, I'm involved in academic medicine. We have to communicate our work, but it takes writing. So anyway, but I'm talking too much. Give me
one more question.
Yeah.
What support does UC Davis have for undocumented students?
Yeah, being undocumented is tough because you're not eligible for federal financial aid. So I think this year, so we have a pool of money that we try to use for undocumented students because they don't qualify for federal financial aid. So basically it comes out of our financial aid budget. We have, I think we have this coming year, two undocumented students or three, but I think total in the school we have 10 or 12. I don't know. It's a lot, between 10 and 15. So we have some resources for undocumented students, but not inexhaustible. So I think we do our best. I think actually that's something that we are trying to work on actually, but it's tough to raise the money because we have a lot of federal financial aid because we have a lot of needy students, financially needy students. 45% of the students at UC Davis, 45% are first generation college students. What does that mean? That means neither of their parents have a college degree. That's the highest percentage in the United States. Most medical schools, the average is 14% of their students are first generation college students. What does that mean? That means a lot of them have financial, struggles. And that's hard in a public medical school. So the undocumented students are a great example of that. So anyway, we do our best. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but we try to support them. And they get some financial aid, but it's all stuff that we raise. It's not federal because you can't at this moment. Now, maybe who knows, maybe with the new, maybe the election, you all should vote, see what happens.
The Pre-Health Dreamers also has a lot of resources that once you're accepted, you could look at. They have a fund set up that is helping people as well. And they have a lot more resources, resources for dreamers and undocumented students. But also, if you're going to a University of California, CSU, or community college, even if you're not going to if you're going to those schools for the UCs and CSUs, but for community colleges, you could go to their undocumented student center and they could give you a lot of resources. Like if you're trying to do an internship and those types of things, they have a host of things that they will help you with that. And they're specialized for that.
And I was just on the point of being an undocumented student. Many undocumented students have some very significant experiences with the healthcare system. I'm not saying they're positive, but that is something that is needed in healthcare. So again, I would say someone who's undocumented probably has a really important experience and perspective to share in healthcare. So just like someone in community college does. So we don't, we take undocumented students, and I think they often bring something very important to our school. And in some of if the undocumented students we have, they're often in one of our tracks, particularly the track that has to do with urban underserved communities, because oftentimes they've interacted with the healthcare system that the federally qualified health centers or community health centers that serve undocumented individuals, undocumented populations. So anyway, there's a need to include individuals like that. That's all I would say.
Some people are freaking out saying that I'm in the current application and one of my friends has gotten a secondary and I haven't, and we apply to the same. What would you answer to those folks that, or they received their secondary but not an interview, and why this and why that? And
You mean
can
from
you talk?
you mean from UC Davis or
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, what I would do is be patient. It's one of those things where our application process is very transparent. There's a website that tells you where you are in the process, where your application is, and there's you can email, you can the portal to find out where you are. So every individual is different. I told you every student's read and everyone's considered differently. There's really no so although I know people get anxious about this stuff, it really doesn't help you. So I mean, and there's going to be a lot of anxiety because a lot of people don't get secondaries.
Can you give him
Yeah.
that example from the marathon that some people at mile one go faster? I
Yeah.
like that one that you said.
I
By
mean,
the way, it was you, Dr. Fitzgerald. I think it was Dr. Fitzgerald.
that is Dr. Fitzgerald. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Fitzgerald. I always remember her during this time of year because the Olympics, that was one of her favorite things to do. Speaking of the marathon, she was a huge fan of the marathon and the other track and field events in the Olympics. The point is for our, I do think that there are the people who they're like eager beavers, or I don't know what you want to call them. They get all their stuff in and everything's perfect at the beginning of the year. But that's that. And then we have other people who kind of maybe they're just completing a course, or maybe they're doing, they're taking the MCAT. But and for various reasons, right? So they get their stuff in later. Our process doesn't prioritize people that apply early don't necessarily get in at a greater rate. Now that's not true everywhere, but we take people throughout the marathon, to Jubin's point. In other words, throughout the whole cycle, people get accepted and down to the wire. And actually the marathon example is that it's that last mile, right? That's the last mile problem. Don't worry if you can. I know there's lots of reasons to get worried about it. I told you how competitive it is. I would say, contact the school through the web portal if you think there's some irregularity or if it's not clear to you where your application is. We also, let me tell you how it works. So some people will get a secondary, some people will get rejected at that point, and then some people will be put in a middle pile, if you will, where they're looked at again and again throughout the year. So I don't know which pile you're in. So I don't know whether for you to get upset or not. So it kind of depends. There's many opportunities in our process, and we keep going back to the pool throughout the year. Now, I know there's a lot of questions, and I want to make sure we get to them. Dr. Green is going to be here. Did you say 2 weeks, Juven, or two or
No, September. I think the second week of September.
Okay, September. So she also can answer any of these questions. In fact, sometime and probably in some ways better than I can, because she's really
The front line.
She's in the front line of and dealing with, if there's been an irregularity or if there's something that, because we're just starting, honestly. I'm surprised actually that that people are getting secondaries, although I'm not surprised. Actually, we do start reading applications in July, so it does make sense that there might be some people. But remember, we have different committees, and those committees work at different speeds. So I don't know if you're in the same committee as your friend. So again, there's just so many variables that could explain why one person did, why one person didn't, that it's not worth getting worried about yet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions. Can you just talk a little bit more about this, about clinical experience and non-clinical experience? Because I think people are really confused about ascribing clinical experience,
Yeah.
and I think that, I would say watch that presentation, but can you add to that as well, Doctor?
Yeah, scribing is definitely, I would consider that a clinical experience. Yes. And so yeah, so anything that where you are learning a skill that you're going to use in healthcare, and scribing, writing notes, hearing the words, learning the language, seeing a physician or a non-physician, PA, nurse practitioner, interact with a patient and scribing for them, I definitely would consider that clinical experience. Was there another specific? Let me try to
Yeah,
check.
they're just asking, like, if I was a homemade, the only thing is people saying that clinical experience, you're not certified. And I would just say that, yeah, I mean, it just depends. Some places look at it one way, some places look at it the other way. But I would just say that where I work at, I'm a tech, but I see a lot of people that are scribing, even though they're not doing the touching of the patients, they're not doing that, but they're seeing how doctors interact, how teams interact. You learn a lot about, like, how uh, uh, primary and secondary surveys and histories are taken. So I think it's a great experience, and on top of everything else, you get paid. So it's like good
Well,
paid job. I mean,
yeah, amen to that. So yes, for like if you need a job, like if that was a thing when I was whatever young, I probably would have done it. I mean, because it's just hard to get a job where you need if you need a job, right? So yes, but I think any of those things to me count. Being an aide, being a CNA, being a all of it. But what I would say is
home
if you're
health aide.
if yeah, home health, yeah, all of that. And I think if you're going to sort of the best way to take advantage, if you will, of that experience is to write about it, make it clear what it was, and then maybe if you get a letter of recommendation, if you've done that for a while, you get a letter, they can sort of attest to your skills and what you did in that role. But there are many different roles. I don't want you to get pigeonholed. You got to do what you can. And as Jubin said earlier, it's hard to get clinical experience, and I don't think it's fair necessarily to say that you have to have this perfect clinical experience. Now, if you take your time and you have a gap year or two or whatever, and you do something, it might be easier than that. But for that, if you have the time to volunteer or something, but these there's just no one formula. And I know people want it to be that way, but it's hard. There's not. So
Yeah, I think people are asking a lot about the community health scholars, the prime teach and stuff, and we put the link in there. You could go read about every single one of them. We're also going to have about 7 medical students in September. I don't know the exact date, but Christy is bringing a couple of people that are in those programs, and you could ask them all about it. But I think we put the link in there, that you could go into detail, because even, because those are all very, very, very specific.
no, and there on the website we describe exactly just what you said. There's plenty of information about whether you would know whether you'd be a good fit for that program. It's on there. It's on our website in the admission stuff. If you just look there.
The other question that people are asking about, this is a couple of ones that I've seen, that what um, so this is actually somebody asking, should I use the Chat GPT for my application? I
Yeah.
would just say that I know that the AMCAS is creating a Chat GPT detector in their
Wow.
application,
There
and
are
nobody
many.
knows
Yeah.
when it's going to go live. So you
But
could
I would
do it.
also tell you that some of our faculty use those detection tools now. And so if you happen to be read by someone, if the person who's the admissions committee that happens to get your application uses a tool and finds it, boy, it could hurt you. So I think there's sort of responsible ways to use ChatGPT, and then I think there are irresponsible ways. And that's a whole nother talk.
Yeah, it's a whole ethical question. Yeah. I know somebody is upset. I've put a lot of links into their chat, and there's a lot of information that's already on the website. So we're just putting him on the link for you to go look at yourself, and so you can take a look at, because these are all like really long things that it's just easier to read it. And people are asked.
What we can do is actually get, I think, again, when you think about when Dr. Green comes, we can I'll try to tell her to keep her, so that she could answer a lot of these questions potentially as well when she gets here. When's Dr. Campa coming? Did you say?
Gosh, I have to
After
open.
or before? Probably.
She's coming after her, yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah. Okay. Well, September isn't far away. It's like a month
Yeah,
away.
it's actually 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
There
3
you go.
weeks. Dr. Green is going to be here in 3 weeks. Yeah, and they're asking about, like, people are asking questions about community, the Health Scholars Program. When does those decisions made, and how you could choose?
Yeah. They're generally made so people have to get into UC Davis School of Medicine first before community health scholar decisions are made. So people get into UC Davis, then there's a secondary, you have to go through a second set of interviews actually with the program, whatever program you apply to. So it's definitely later. March, April, May. So it's in the later part of the year. Sometimes they start in February, but it's later. So because there's a second set of interviews that go with each of those programs. Now you have to fill out a secondary that indicates your interest and why, and those secondaries are screened by people in the various community health scholar programs. So they know what they're looking for, and they know, what kind of students that can succeed in the program.
This is a question that's not on the website. So they ask what happens after somebody that interviews, and then what's the process after that, and how do you decide when a person gets accepted or not accepted?
Well, the answer is I don't decide. I don't have actually.
Well, yeah, right. The process.
So the after your interview, applications are usually reviewed by a committee within 2 weeks. And then a second committee, so we have multiple committees, that a second committee reviews that first committee's assessment of the interviewed candidates a week later. So oftentimes our students get a decision within 3 weeks of their interview. 3 weeks, you're in, you're out, or you're on the wait list. That's our standard, and we try to stick to that about 3 weeks after the interview-ish. Was that the question, Juven? Sorry.
Yeah. It's just basically the process. So, yep, and somebody wants to know if I submit my application now, if it's too late.
It's not too late.
It's not too late.
Now, not too late. No.
This is another one. Is what's a piece of advice would you give to people that want to apply to medical school? Words of wisdom, secret sauce.
Yeah. I told you, well, watch Aladdin and listen to the genie. I'm dead serious. Now, people don't take that advice. Whatever that is, who you are, that's what you do with your time. That's where you come from. That's where that should be. That's the advice. Be yourself in every possible way. Don't fake it. Be somebody else or do something. Yeah. That's just not going to work, especially in our process. We're pretty good at detecting that.
About how many students are accepted from your wait list?
It's all over the map. It depends on the year. It could be 10, it could be 50, actually. So it depends. Yeah. I mean, but we always have a good number. I'd say the minimum number is 10 or even 20 is a minimum number.
Yeah, the only thing that I could say is that on X Street, when you drive around that corner, on top of the Med Ed building, there's this big radar it's called a BS detector. They're pretty good at picking up stuff. So
Yeah, we're not perfect, but I just think that again, that advice about being yourself and our wait list again, it really depends on the year. It's very variable. But I'll just say the answer is there are plenty of people that get in off the wait list, and remember that is around May. We don't accept anybody from the wait list until May, late April, May. So
and
okay.
and I think we've kept you here um for 6 minutes longer. And going on out, I'm gonna put the Aladdin song in the chat for people to
Yeah,
have a
if you
look at it.
Yeah, maybe you're too young to have heard of Robin Williams, but you should check him out. He died a few years ago, but yeah, he's in the movie. He's the genie.
Yeah, I'm just trying to hold on. So I'll put that in the thing. Look at the song.
Right. So be yourself, stick with it. Don't give up. And again, save your other questions for Dr. Green. She'll give you straight too. She can add to the stuff that we didn't get to. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Henderson. It was great seeing you.
Ditto,
And
nice to meet you.
and I'm going to keep the chat open for a few minutes so you can download the links. Please don't email us afterwards to get the links because we're not going to have them. So download whatever you need. And again, great seeing you.
Bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.